In this video, I'm going to show you how to do one of the most complicated moves in archery, and that is how to properly lift the bow from this position down here up to this position right before you start to draw back. When you lift the bow properly, just before you go to draw the bow back, it actually can make drawing the bow back much easier, make the overall shot much easier, and hopefully make your groups better downrange. So I'm going to do my best today to explain to you how to do the most complicated move in archery, at least in my opinion. It's at least the most complicated to me because I have the hardest time getting my students that I coach to mimic the correct movement as quickly as some of the other form changes that they can implement. You know, people can change their release, change their follow through, change the way they stand, their head position, things like that, anchor, finger pressure on the string, all of those things are very easy for most people to change and to adjust. But lifting the bow in a different way and then getting into correct position before drawing the bow back seems to be very, very difficult. And it's understandable because it is very complicated. There's many, many things that are happening, and it can get a little bit overwhelming when you're not doing it with a light enough bow, a light enough draw weight, because it's very challenging to do correct movements under a heavy amount of load, because you do actually risk some injury in the shoulders if you're putting them in some bad positions. So I would always recommend, if you're going to try doing something like this to modify your form, to start with the lightest bow you have available. If it's not under 15 pounds, you should probably just pick up a stretch band or get yourself a set of training limbs that are very, very lightweight. Borrow a bow from somebody. Even maybe pick up your kid's bow if they have a setup that's very, very light. So like I said, the most complicated move is actually going from this position here, which you can also reference as set position, to set up position, which is here, right before you go to draw the bow back. As you can see, I'm shaking a little bit, at least I felt it, because this bow is right about 46 pounds of draw weight. So I'm going to set it down and stop doing that, because I don't want to hurt myself. Now, all the things that I'm going to cover are in this book here. It's called Total Archery. It's written by an ex-teammate of mine, Tyler Benner, as well as my old coach, Keesick Lee. And basically, it takes you through step by step the entire process that I use in shooting my recurve bow as well as my bare bow. So if you're interested in that manual there, I will have links in the description below to my website, jkaminski.com, and I will also post a link to Lancaster Archery Supply in case you want to grab it there. Now, the stretch band I'm going to use today is this fancy one here that is a continuous loop with a built-in sling. So that way, when I go to shoot it, I can't drop it and I can just grab it again. I will also have links in the description below for this in case you're interested. You can also just pick up some TheraBand, very cheap on Amazon or something. I'll also put links down below for that. This is a yellow band. The bands from the brand TheraBand mean things. The lighter colors are lighter in draw weight or lighter in resistance. So don't go for the black ones or the gray ones. Go for the red one or the yellow one, because this really allows you to do a whole lot of things without any risk for injury, as well as ease of getting into position. Now, it is challenging with the stretch band compared to the bow because there is no limitations. I can put it in any possible position that I want. So you don't have the attachment of the string to the bow, so I can move these independently and move it all over the place. So, in a way, this is a really good training aid to not only learn how to do the movement, but to also train it deeper in your brain to do something called proprioception, strengthening the connections between the brain and the muscles to make the muscles move correctly and fire correctly, which makes the body move right. So, going from set position to set up position, why it's so challenging is you're not just lifting the bow, you're also starting to pre-draw the bow, you're paying attention to body positions and angles relative to the ground, relative to your shoulders and your arms. You're also trying to maintain hook onto the string, and you have to deal with head position, body position, and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to start with just some basic principles first that I think everybody, no matter what style of shooting you do use, even if you don't use the style of shooting that I use, the KSL shot cycle, everybody should do it in this manner. So at least from this position, before you lift the bow, after you have the arrow nocked and everything, look at your target. Make sure you acquire your target, look at what you're about to hit at, and don't start moving until you do so. I can't tell you how many times I see people put their arrow in their string and then lift their bow and then look up. You're shooting a visually dominated sport, meaning it's mostly hand-eye coordination actually. And so if you're not looking at the object you want to shoot, your target, before you lift the bow, you're already starting off on the wrong foot by not giving your subconscious brain the amazing control that we have with hand-eye coordination. You're shutting that off and not even starting with it. So give yourself a good chance here to start off on the right foot. Look at your target first and then lift the bow. Part of looking at the target first is making sure you're standing straight. Don't lean back. Back this way on the shooting line, back away from the target. Stand straight. Have your feet roughly shoulder width or more apart, and just stand nice and vertically straight. Also keep your head nice and neutral. So if you're my target, I'm just gonna keep it here nice and relaxed and neutral. I'm not cocking it to the side. I'm not cocking it this way. Looking down across the bridge of my nose, my head is nice and neutral. And as I go to lift, I'm going to keep my body position here and keep my head position here without moving anything at all right into full draw. So going from set to set up, you'll see that my main body doesn't move and my head position doesn't move. I don't lift the bow and go to the string like this and move my head forward. I also don't lean back as I'm lifting the bow up. Something to pay attention to, for a quick tip to keep your body from rocking back and forth, is as you lift the bow, more so with a bow, far less with a stretch band, you must feel the weight shift forward on your front foot. Don't keep the weight even between your 2 feet, meaning don't feel the same amount of weight on both feet, right? The front foot, the bow side, the foot towards the bow, will have more weight if you maintain your position here, because the bow can weigh upwards of 6+ pounds. And if you're like me, having a 30-inch draw length, roughly, a 6-pound object 30 inches outside of my center line, if I keep my structure the same, will shift my weight onto that front foot, right? And as I lift, it shifts further out. I will have actually the vast majority of my weight on the ball of the foot that is towards the bow. Head position the same, body position the same. Don't move as you lift the bow, okay? It's that simple. Just don't change your body position. That's a great place to start. I'm gonna go through a couple of other common faults that I'm seeing in regards to how people lift the bow. And one of those is mostly breaking your alignment, where they're lifting up the bow and staying at brace height. So if I show you here with a bow, and if I lift my bow from set to set up and I follow brace height and I keep my body position here, you'll see that my elbow is very far forward of what would be ideal. So if I'm here near my target and I lift my bow and I follow brace height, you can see how my elbow is really far outside of the arrow line. More efficient shooting requires the elbow to be at least in line with the arrow, one at full draw. So if I'm pointing at you, you can't see my elbow, right? Inefficient shooting would be the elbow outside of the arrow line here, which results in a bit of a triangle between this shoulder, and this wrist. I'm going to put links in the description below and a card at the top up there to a video I created about archery alignment and how to get into better alignment. So if you haven't seen that yet, you should check that out. I have a camera overhead so you can see the triangle that I'm talking about here. Elbow being outside the arrow line is a bad position. It's inefficient and you're using more muscles to hold the bow back instead of bones. So because of that, what you don't want to have happen from set to setup is following the bow to brace height. Because if I do so, I have a massive triangle here as I lift my bow, right? If I keep my torso in position and if anything, add a little bit of rotation, it will fix itself and I'll have a decent alignment. I'll be in a good position. So from set to setup, without lifting the bow, I go from set to setup. You'll see that my torso rotates here slightly. So from set to setup, my torso rotated. What that did is it also took and tucked my elbow inside a little bit from set to set up. Now you can see my elbow is just about in line with where my arrow would be. It allows the body to work as efficiently as possible, as soon as possible in the shot, and it starts to set the ball in motion correctly from the beginning, which makes it easier to maintain once you're at full draw and allows you to shoot better groups down range with a lot less effort. So if you can lift the bow from set to setup and let your shoulders be the dictator of where this length ends up, you'll be in much better shape. So don't go from set to setup at brace height and then try to pull this whole way. It's just starting from a bad position. If you start from here and you rotate and hit this position, you can see I'm pre-drawed, right? I'm drawing the bow back to a certain amount, right? And what I'm doing is I'm getting back to a safe place. This is where most injuries happen in the string side shoulder, and especially it happens when making form changes with a heavy bow. What I want to show you is a few guides again as to what I believe is a very safe place to be in regards to your shoulder. Now, the way that I'm drawing this bow back is very specific for Olympic style archery or bare bow archery, not necessarily for super traditional archery. Yes, I shoot my trad bow just the same way here, but I'm not shooting 80 plus pounds and shooting war bows at extremely high draw weight or using an Asiatic style archery. So I'm not suggesting that it's impossible to draw any other way, but if you're going to shoot archery styles like I do, definitely I'd advise to not do some of the things that you see that people with war bows do. So specifically, I'm talking about how to protect the shoulder. So to be specific, going from set to setup, we know, try to set this point, and this point in a straight line as much as possible with a little bit of rotation here as early as possible in the shot. So before setup happens, trying to get this in a line. So instead of, remember, following the brace height, this triangle, right? Now when I lift the bow, and I'm going to angle down just so you can see, I rotate the torso ever so much, and now you can see this shoulder, and this wrist are basically in a straight line. The rough rule of thumb is if you draw a line from my humerus, this is the upper bone in my arm, so if I draw a line from on the humerus, and then I draw another line between these two shoulders, I never want to go less than 90 degrees. I want to stay at least at 90 degrees here, right? I don't want to be an acute angle. It closes off the subacromial space and risks impingement, damage to the shoulders. So I'm at least at 90 degrees. A little bit more is okay, but anything more than the wrist coming back past your nose and face is a bit excessive. So from set to setup, you can see how my wrist is roughly in line with my nose. I'm not drawing it back all the way to here. I'm basically at full draw at this position, so I don't go quite back that far. The other absolute that I would recommend is don't lift the humerus above parallel to the ground. Anything that lifts the humerus bone above parallel to the ground here, any higher like this, again, closes off the subacromial space. And if you're interested in keeping the alignment between the two shoulders and the wrist in this position here at setup, anything above this here starts to cause some pain and discomfort in the shoulder. And if you're like me that has shoulder issues to begin with, and you're a little bit tight because you haven't been spending much time to stretch and work on recovery, guilty as charged, then you can do this without a bow itself, go into this position and go from parallel to the ground with the humerus to above parallel to the ground, and feel how much excess tension and binding and all sorts of possibilities are happening in this shoulder. And then imagine adding 35 pounds at this rough draw length here to this system, and you'll feel the potential for injury arise there. Can't recommend a light stretch band or a light bow enough. Set position to set up, keep the body straight, keep your head straight, set your head first and keep it there, lift, add a little bit of rotation, let this be under tension. Don't add any sort of tension with the arm. You didn't hear me add or mention any sort of purposeful drawing of the bow. All of that drawing comes from the rotation of the torso to get these 3 points in a line. Make sure the humerus is no less than 90 degrees relative to the two shoulders, and make sure the humerus is not above level or parallel to the ground. Some other tips on how to lift the bow properly would be to not lift with this side. The bow side does basically all the lifting, and the draw side just kind of follows. It's following under tension, and it's following into just a specific position, but it's not actually lifting a whole lot. If I try to move the string independent of the bow, it's impossible. It doesn't move. It's rigidly connected, well, relatively rigidly connected, right? And so if I'm hooked onto the string and all I do is I lift the bow, you'll see how the string side, the draw side, follows. I'm not lifting or engaging at all with my shoulder or lifting, engaging at all with my draw hand. But if I lift the bow, I can point it straight up and my hand just follows naturally because it's connected. I just let the tension from the grip to the string where I'm holding on to it draw a continuous straight line towards the tip of my elbow. So in this position here, there's roughly a straight line from the grip to my fingers on the string to the tip of my elbow. But for sure, as I lift the bow, you can see how it's maintaining this rough straight line once I'm up here in pre-kind of setup position. I didn't quite get there all the way because I didn't want to hurt myself. So if I go from set to set up properly, you'll see that everything is in just a straight line. I'm just maintaining tension and pulling from the shoulder, rotating with the shoulder to get those shoulders into alignment, to let the tension just kind of happen from the shoulder through the elbow into the fingers, all in a straight line. I'm not manipulating or pulling my arm or my bicep to make the position or the distance happen, right? So I'm really just lifting with the bow side and letting the draw side follow, starting the rotation with my shoulder. And then once I draw the bow back, I continually keep that power going in the shoulder and let the hand and the arm just follow. I'm not pulling with the bicep or pulling on the string with my fingers. I'm pulling with the shoulder, actually. One thing to pay attention to there, make sure you're not lifting up with your shoulders. Part of the preset position down here, when I'm looked at the target, take a breath, let the shoulders fall, and then keep them down and relaxed. Don't start to engage the shoulders. Don't be in this position. A lot of people in set position will start to add tension here, and that lifts this shoulder up like this, and then they're starting from a really bad position with that shoulder elevated, the elbow elevated, and it all just continues to snowball as the shot progresses. So, sounds simple. It's as simple as I can possibly explain it. There is so much going on. It might be a good idea to compartmentalize and work on a few steps by themselves, or just ingrain it into your system with a stretch band or a light bow. I like the light bow personally for this movement because, again, this is rigidly connected. So I can lift this side and this side will follow much better, and I will do a lot less lifting with the draw side, potentially preventing a bad habit from forming. So if you can do it with a stretch band or a light bow, like I said, even better. In front of a mirror, if I look at myself in the viewfinder, what I can do is, okay, am I standing straight? Are my shoulders elevated? Is my head in a neutral position? If I look at like here, okay, now as I lift the bow, am I shifting back? Did I lift with my shoulder? Did I lose my head position? Am I following brace height? Now my elbow's out, or am I lifting, rotating, maintaining tension, and I can check myself and coach myself to not only be a better shooter, but also now I have a connection to how it feels, and I'll actually shoot much better over time because I'm focusing on the feeling of the shot instead of just flinging some arrows. So hopefully this helped. If you wouldn't mind, please do subscribe and hit that notification bell down below. Genuinely, it helps this channel out. And if you wouldn't mind and you enjoyed this video, consider sharing it. I don't operate any other social media, so I rely on you to spread the word about this channel. Also, please do consider supporting this channel. There's many different links in the description below. There's also lots of affiliate links that if you're going to buy products, you can just click on those links and go about your normal shopping, not spending any other extra money, and that helps support this channel too. So I can't thank my supporters enough. Genuinely, I would not be able to do this, not at least to this level, without your help. So thank you.